Okay, Year 12s, we're moving to our next passage analysis, Book 2, Chapter 2, Time Flies, and we're looking at the dismantling of the death chambers. So if you turn to page 231 and follow me as I take you through the series of panels here, we will begin to examine the theme of art and representation and see where that takes us. Don't forget your questions here, so they should be in the forefront of your mind as you think about what the image, the text, and the panel organisation are attempting to communicate to you. Okay, so it's interesting here that I think Vladek talks about his job here in helping to dismantle the gas chambers as the Allies advance and the Germans want to erase any knowledge or any evidence of what's transpired. So interestingly, on page 230, if you backtrack a little bit, we've got references to diagrams, and diagrams are really important in developing for us an understanding of the layout of Auschwitz and just trying to work out the configuration of buildings, etc. So on page 230, you will see that there is a specific reference to the crematorium 2, and there's details such as the execution room, the undressing room, the room for melting gold fillings, the corpse lift, the chimney. It's pretty macabre. So the diagram is a bit of an overlay. So what we have is an innocuous type building which is described as being like a big bakery, but what we have in reality is a death chamber. So the overlay of the diagram upon what seems to be quite an innocuous building is suggestive of a few things. So before we get to page 231, I just want to make sure that you're aware of the importance of diagrams, particularly in this series of panels, because they really help with our understanding of the layout of Auschwitz. But more than that, what they do is they suggest to us the systematic, pre-planned, organised, regimented policy of the Nazi regime to obliterate, to destroy, to kill, to murder 6 million Jews. So big questions, and the theme of art and representation doesn't cover it all. We're really looking at memory and Holocaust memory and blame and responsibility. So big questions there about accountability and how you hold the German people to account here are fundamental, I think, in analysing the way that these panels are put together. So in terms of art and representation, we'll see that art does grapple with this whole idea of responsibility and who is to blame, and there's that issue of guilt that is attached to survival. So clearly the Nazi regime, Hitler did it, is one of the quotes, is a very tangible way of laying blame at a particular group of people. But then of course there's the question of the German people per se, and the silence embodied in the act of inaction. So inaction becomes, in a sense, a form of action, because not to speak, as Bonhoeffer, for those of you who recall your study with Mrs. B, Bonhoeffer was a German theologian who spoke about the oppressive Nazi regime and the importance of speaking out. He was killed by the regime, incidentally, but he maintained that very steadfast view that inaction is not an adequate response. Okay, there is a response in responsibility, and that's something that Elie Wiesel talks about as well. So I think those big questions about who is to blame really, in a way, are encapsulated in these panels here. So by showing the diagram on page 230, so you should have flipped back and had a look at the layout of the gas chamber, we see that this wasn't just a random thing. This wasn't just a reaction to war. It wasn't a response that was spontaneous, but the killing of 6 million Jews was deliberate. And so we have highlighted there the absolute cruelty of the regime. So I think these panels clearly illustrate the way that these buildings are geared up to murder millions of people. That the scale of the thing is incredible. So that's the first thing I want to point out. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to read the panels now that we've got that kind of context in mind, and think about the way the images and the text and the panel organisations work to illustrate that point about responsibility and the absolute horror associated with this. Okay, so, and everybody crowded inside into the shower room, the door closed hermetic and the lights turned dark. Zyklon B, a pesticide, dropped into hollow columns. It was between 3 and 30 minutes. It depended how much gas they put, but soon was nobody anymore alive. And so we've got Vladek framing this story of death, the antithesis of survival here. We've got death. And the interesting point here is that Vladek actually sees these buildings. If you have a look, there's another important quote on page 229. We've got the looming image of the chimney with that kind of billowing smoke as the backdrop. And we know, because of our understanding of this historical time period, that denotes death on a mass scale. And with that associated chimney, we have the smell of burning flesh, that sweet odour, all those horrible associations that we've read about time and time again in various texts that we've studied. So Vladek says, "For this I was an eyewitness." So we're going back to that whole idea of Holocaust memory and testimonial. So Vladek emphasises here in this historical part of the text the truth of what he saw. Okay, it's almost that like he prefaces his discussion of the next panels with that eyewitness reference, because he needs to make it clear that this was a reality, that this isn't some kind of mad crazy nightmare, but is something that he can testify that he saw. So I think that's pretty important. Okay, so where did we get up to? Oh, it's the Zyklon B. So that becomes important as well. So that feeds into the whole anthropomorphic allusion to mice, because we have quite disgustingly the use of Zyklon B as a pesticide to kill animals as well, such as mice and vermin. So that analogy that's drawn throughout the text to Mickey Mouse and other references to Jews as vermin, not a human race, is extended there in terms of the very choice of poison used to kill the Jewish people. That confirms for us the Germans' view of the Jews as being less than human. Okay, so the biggest pile of bodies lay right next to the door where they tried to get out. So there's lots suggested there. Okay, so we have the door and what's hidden behind the door. So there's connotations there that are quite unimaginable. And so in some ways art spares us the details of the the fingernails trying to escape, and the fingernails embedded in the walls and the doors, and all the imagery associated with the way that these people died. It's horrific. Okay. This guy who worked there, he told me, but then we get a little bit of detail. So this is secondhand. So we've got Vladek's testimony. For this, I was an eyewitness, but now we've got some more information that is secondary information to add to this illustration of the gas chambers. We pulled the bodies apart with hooks, big piles with the strongest on top, older ones and babies crushed below. Often the skulls were smashed. Their fingers were broken from trying to climb up the walls, and sometimes their arms were as long as their bodies pulled from the sockets. And Vladek says, enough. So it's interesting in terms of panel organisation, the way that art decides to shut out some of that graphic imagery, yet here Vladek's friend communicates those details, and then Vladek says enough. So that kind of fits in with the survival tale in terms of Vladek trying to draw on positive experiences to help him or to sustain him post the Holocaust. So I think that is a strategy that he uses frequently. He tries to block out these really horrific episodes because he can't begin to process them. So we've got the enough. I didn't want more to hear, but anyway, he told me. Okay, they pulled the bodies with an elevator up to the ovens, many ovens, and to each one they burned 2 or 3 at a time. Okay, so we've got Vladek again framing the story, and we've got the corresponding image of the incinerators there. And that elongated kind of sweeping technique is reminiscent for me of the train, okay, and the train carriage taking the Jews inevitably to Auschwitz. So this is their final destination. I could be reading more into that than there is, but to me there is that distinct similarity in terms of the way that the train carriages are drawn, and they seem to be projecting the movement forward, and we know where that forward is. It's that image of Auschwitz that we have with the framing quote, "Work makes you free," and the reality that dawns finally on the Jewish people as they realize that their fate is sealed. So here we have that sealed here with the incinerators. And then the final poignant statement, "To such a place finished my father, my sisters, my brother, so many." And if we're not sympathetic towards Vladek, we certainly are now. It's almost the understatement that underpins our empathetic response to him, because he says it in a way that's so matter-of-fact, and there's not a lot more that you can say here. We just have that image of the ovens, and we can fill in the blanks there in terms of the morbid details. So all of this Vladek has to contend with. Okay, that's probably all I've got to say about those panels there. I'll leave it at that.